He asked her to pretend to be his wife just for 4 weeks. But when Lauren looked into Cole Harrington's eyes that snowy afternoon in Denver, she didn't see power or arrogance. She saw a man quietly breaking, someone asking for help the only way he knew how. Outside, the city kept moving horns, deadlines, people rushing past each other without looking back. Inside his glass office, time stood still between them, heavy with unspoken loss and something that almost felt like hope. Sometimes, the hardest deals we make aren't written on paper. They're the ones that ask us to risk our hearts again. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin. Snow was drifting sideways outside the tall glass of the Harrington Tower when Lauren Hale stepped into the boardroom, a folder clutched against her chest. The late Denver afternoon carried that blue light that comes before a storm, quiet, brittle, expectant. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and jet fuel. The meeting had run too long, the way they always did when Cole Harrington was involved. She stopped 3 steps from the long mahogany table. Cole sat at the far end, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled, eyes unreadable as they flicked across a spreadsheet. He didn't look up until she spoke. The supply chain for the Newport order can be stabilized within 2 weeks if we redirect the Kansas plant, she said, keeping her tone steady. But the Beaumont delegation needs confirmation before Friday. Cole lifted his gaze, then calm, analytical, but softer than usual, as if exhaustion had sanded down the edges. Before Friday, he repeated. That's not enough time for what they're asking. Lauren hesitated. You mean the redesign? He leaned back, studying her like a puzzle. No, not the redesign. A long pause. Sit down. Lauren. She obeyed, though something in his voice made her chest tighten. She'd worked for him 5 years, long enough to know when his tone shifted from command to confession. He set the tablet aside. The Beaumont family is conservative, image-obsessed. They trust family men. They believe a company reflects the man who leads it his home, his values. I've heard the rumors, she said lightly. They made the last CEO of Air North parade his grandchildren around the factory. Cole didn't smile. They want stability, legacy. I can't offer them that, at least, not on paper. He paused. Which is why I need your help. Lauren blinked. My help. His eyes held hers. I need you to act like my wife. For 4 weeks. For a moment. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the room. Snow pressed against the windows like static. I'm sorry, she said finally. Could you repeat that? He folded his hands on the table, as if reading from an internal script. The Beaumont contract is worth nearly 1/4 of our annual revenue. They've made it clear they'll only finalize with a partner they perceive as rooted, married, stable. And your solution, she said carefully, is to borrow a wife. His mouth twitched, not amusement, but self-awareness. I've considered professionals, actresses, publicists, but their lives wouldn't withstand the level of scrutiny the Beaumonts apply. Background checks, social history, financials. They hire investigators who can map your life in a day. So, you thought of me, she said. I thought of someone already in the company, he corrected. Someone who can be discreet and credible. Someone who understands me enough to make the act believable. The weight of his words hung between them. She tried to laugh, but it came out thin. Mr. Harrington. That's, well, absurd and wildly inappropriate. You're free to refuse, he said evenly. You won't lose your position. That's considerate, she murmured, her heart thudding. Still, I don't see how pretending to be married helps anyone. He rose then, moving to the window where snow blurred the skyline into watercolor grays. I used to think optics didn't matter, he said quietly. That competence could outrun perception. I was wrong. The board wants the merger. The investors want the stock boost. Everyone wins if I look normal. The word stung her normal, as if grief had rendered him something else. She knew his story, widowed at 42. No children, wife lost to illness. He hadn't dated since. The tabloids called him the Tin Man of Denver. And what do I win? She asked. He turned, and for a second she saw something human flicker beneath the polish. You win nothing, he said, except a large paycheck, paid leave, and the satisfaction of helping 5,000 employees keep their jobs. Lauren almost smiled at that. He always found the moral pressure point. Still, her instinct screamed to leave to walk out before this crossed from professional into something murky. I appreciate the offer, she said, standing, but I don't think I'm the right person. He watched her gather her folder. Because it's false, because it's complicated. He nodded once, almost to himself. Then I owe you the truth about why it's more complicated than you think. Something in his tone made her pause. She sat back down slowly. He walked to the sideboard, poured a glass of water, but didn't drink it. This arrangement, it isn't only about the Beaumonts. There's another reason I need someone I can trust. Her pulse quickened. What kind of reason? He looked straight at her. A child. The word landed like a dropped stone. He went on, steady but quiet. A private guardianship. It's sensitive. I'll explain fully if you agree to the role. For now, I can only say it involves a child who doesn't deserve the fallout of public gossip. Lauren stared. You're asking me to help with that too. I'm asking for someone who won't run at the first moral gray area, he said softly. If this crosses your line, say no now. I'll find another way. Outside, the wind howled against the glass. Lauren's fingers tightened around her pen. A child. The word stirred something raw in her memories of hospital hallways, of promises made to her son after his father's funeral. She wanted to refuse, to stand and leave, but she couldn't quite move. Cole's gaze didn't waver. Think before you answer. I don't want a performance. I need an ally. The snow thickened beyond the window, turning Denver into a white blur. Somewhere below, traffic lights blinked like distant beacons. Lauren drew a slow breath. You're asking a lot. Mr. Harrington. I know. You should also know, she said, voice low, that I don't do well with lies. Then we'll have to tell the kind that saves people, not the kind that ruins them. Her hand trembled against the folder. For the first time in years, she felt both afraid and curious, two emotions she'd thought long buried. She looked at him, at the man who built empires out of precision, now asking her to step into a fiction that sounded dangerously close to truth. I'll think about it, she said finally. He nodded once, as though that were enough. Take tonight. My office will send the terms in the morning. When she rose to leave, his reflection caught hers in the glass. Two outlines, separate yet strangely parallel, blurred by snow. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Lauren realized her hands were still shaking. The coffee came black and honest, poured by a waitress who called everyone hun like it was a blessing. Morning sun slid between the blinds of the corner booth, laying stripes across a stack of contracts. Lauren wrapped her hands around the mug, the heat steadying her breath, the smell of cinnamon toast and bacon reminding her that some things in this world were still simple. Across from her sat Cole Harrington and a woman with iron-gray hair and a courtroom's patience. Renee Dalton, the woman had said, extending a hand. General counsel. The handshake had been dry, deliberate, and without theater. Good. Lauren had no appetite for theater. We can go through the terms in order, Renee said, flipping the leather folder open. Travel, public appearances, press notes. The arrangement would begin immediately following signing and concludes after the Newport presentation cycle. Lauren nodded once. Before we begin, she said, her voice even, I need to be very clear about my lines. Renee set her pen down, interested. Cole's gaze lifted from the pages, measuring. Lauren met it without blinking. First, she said, separate rooms on every trip, not adjoining, not implied otherwise. That's not negotiable, Renee wrote as she spoke, her pen making a soft judicial whisper. Cole didn't flinch. Done, he said. Second, Lauren continued. Any stipend or appearance fee tied to this arrangement, she let the word hang because it deserved that weight, will be paid into a scholarship fund under my late husband's name. Community college aviation tech students. He always said the best mechanics he met learned with their hands, not in marble halls. Renee's pen paused. Cole glanced at Lauren, something like respect passing over his face. Name of the fund, he asked. It doesn't exist yet, Lauren said quietly, but it should. Renee underlined a space and wrote Hale Scholarship Setup. Immediate. Cole didn't haggle. We'll set it up today. Third, Lauren said, a non-disclosure that protects the child more than it protects either of us. I won't be part of any arrangement that leaves a door open to curiosity seekers. Renee looked up. Specific protections, medical, educational, location, caregivers, redactions in any public filings that could triangulate an address. Noted, Renee said, already shaping the clause in her head. Fourth, Lauren said, and here her voice thinned. Just a fraction. Full truth about the child before we set foot in Newport. I won't improvise around a life. Silence touched the table for a heartbeat. The clink of plates and the hum of a ball game on a wall TV filled the edges. Cole's jaw worked, then eased. You'll have it, he said. All of it. Renee pushed a fresh document forward. I'll build these into the base agreement, Mr. Harrington. We'll need to adjust the timeline for disclosures. We adjust? Cole said. Renee took them through logistics. A press memo that said almost nothing. A travel grid, Denver to Providence to Newport, then back west. A calendar of dinners and factory walkthroughs, where handshakes and small talk did more than spreadsheets. Lines specifying that Mrs. was a public courtesy only. Separate rooms noted, bolded. Lauren listened, jotting small script on a legal pad that had her husband's initials pressed into the corner. E.T.H. A gift from Owen the year before the accident. She made herself breathe every few minutes. She counted the blinds. She watched the steam lift from the coffee and disappear. When Renee paused for signatures, Lauren slid the papers back. Untouched. One more thing, she said. Renee arched an eyebrow. Yes, I have a son. Lauren said, 15. His name is Owen. He's bright, stubborn, and allergic to pretense. If I do this, he doesn't learn about it from a headline. He hears it from us first, and here's the why. Cole sat a little straighter. From us, he repeated. You and me, Lauren said, today. I'll come by after school, he said. No hesitation. We'll tell him together. He can ask me anything he wants. The quickness of his answer unsettled her, more than resistance would have. Most men in power bargained when family entered the room. Cole didn't bargain. He simply offered his time like it was the only currency that mattered. Renee slid the signature tabs back across the table. With those additions, these are ready. Lauren read, every line, every comma. She'd learned the hard way that the smallest words were the ones that bit later, customary, unless... When she was done, she tapped the clause about separate rooms. This language holds, even if a Beaumont cousin tries to play detective with hotel staff. Renee's mouth tilted. It holds, and I'll brief the hotels. Staff confidentiality, housekeeping coordination, separate floors if needed. Lauren nodded. She tapped the non-disclosure. This is tight. It's tighter than most marriages, Renee said, not unkindly. Lauren signed the first page, the second, the fifth. The pen felt heavier than its weight. Cole waited, hands folded. When it was his turn, he signed without corrections. When he reached the stipend clause, he paused only to look at Lauren. What do we call it? He asked. The Ethan Hale Scholarship, she said, barely more than a breath. It should have existed already, he said, and wrote the name in his own hand on the line. He didn't just initial, he spelled every letter like he was laying a cornerstone. Something pinched behind Lauren's eyes sharp, hot, inconvenient. She shifted her gaze to the window, to a repair truck backing into the alley, to the waitress pouring fresh coffee for a trucker in a flannel coat. She blinked until the sting eased. Renee gathered the signed pages with a small, satisfied nod. I'll have funding documentation this afternoon. We'll also send over media training, sound bites, talking points. Keep them short, Lauren said. I don't lie well, and I don't want to learn. Renee slid a stapled packet free. Then we highlight what's true. Commitment to workforce, respect for legacy, the rest is silence. Cole reached for his wallet, then thought better and left cash on the table like a civilian. Thank you, Renee. Give me 2 hours, then send over the travel grid and the speech rehearsal plan. Renee stood. I'll be in the office if you need me. She gave Lauren a look that was almost maternal. You did good work in there. After Renee left, the booth felt larger, the air cooler. The TV called a strike. Somebody laughed 2 tables over. The world kept turning, as if lives didn't pivot on signatures. Thank you, Cole said. Not the corporate thanks, the kind a man says when he means it. For what? For drawing lines, he said. They make this safer for the right people. The scholarship, she said, surprising herself. You didn't even ask the amount. It'll be enough for real futures, he said. And if it isn't, we'll raise it. She studied him, the careful hands. The watch scuffed at the edge, the fatigue that had settled into the corners of his eyes like a long winter. You said you'd tell me the truth about the child. I did, he said, and I will. This afternoon, before we fly east. Not here, not here, he said softly. Some truths deserve a door and a chair and no witnesses. Lauren traced the groove in the tabletop where 1,000 coffee cups had rested. Out the window, the city shook off its thin veil of frost. People moved, trucks came and went. Somewhere, school let out and a bell sent teenagers pouring into the afternoon, laughing too loud, jostling at bus stops. In 2 hours, she and Cole would sit with her son and explain a performance that was trying very hard not to be one. She lifted her mug, sipped what had gone lukewarm, and felt the day tilt again, just slightly. Guarded, yes, but no longer running. I'll text you our address, she said. I'll be there, he answered. And for the first time since the snow started, she believed him. The road thinned as they left the city, trading Denver's glass for Wyoming's endless sky. Lauren watched the horizon stretch in every direction, the winter light low and copper, spilling across the red earth like the last ember of a long day. Cole drove with both hands steady on the wheel, saying little. The radio turned low to the hum of an old country station. She'd learned that his silences weren't cold. They were careful, each one weighed before released. The drive took nearly 4 hours. Snow had melted into dust along the shoulders of the highway, and the occasional herd of antelope moved like ghosts through the sage. When Cole finally turned off onto a gravel road, Lauren spotted a small sign, nearly hidden by weeds. Whitmore Ranch, Est, 1948. This is where she lives, she asked quietly. He nodded. My sister's daughter. Lily. She waited for more, but he only adjusted his grip on the steering wheel and took the last curve toward a squat farmhouse with a sagging porch and wind chimes tangled from the cold. An elderly man waited by the fence, one hand braced against the post, the other gripping an oxygen tank that hissed softly. Behind him, a woman waved from the porch, her frame thin, her apron faded but clean. Cole parked, cut the engine, and stepped out first. Mr. and Mrs. Givens, he said gently. It's good to see you. The old man smiled, though it took effort. Cole, you drive too far for an old man's handshake? Lauren followed, dust crunching under her boots. The air smelled like dry hay and pine smoke. Cole's voice softened as he made introductions. This is Lauren Hale. She works with me. She's helping with some arrangements. Mrs. Givens looked Lauren over with the weary kindness of someone who'd seen too many helpers come and go. Arrangements, she repeated. That's one word for it. Lauren caught the flicker in Cole's expression, a mix of guilt and respect. Inside. The house was small and clean, walls lined with photographs, birthdays, a girl in pigtails, a man in uniform whose smile belonged to another decade. The air was warm from a wood stove, scented faintly with cinnamon. Then came a soft shuffle on the stairs. A girl about 8 appeared, one hand gripping the railing, her dark blonde hair escaping a braid. Her eyes were startling gray-blue, steady, old in a way that children's eyes shouldn't be. "Lily," Cole said, his voice gentler than Lauren had ever heard it. "Come say hello." The girl didn't move closer. She studied Lauren for a long moment before asking, "Are you the lady who can stand the quiet?" Lauren blinked. "The what?" "The quiet," Lily said again, serious as a judge. "Sometimes people come here and say they love the country, but then they hate how quiet it is. They talk too much." Lauren smiled, though her throat tightened. "I think I can stand the quiet," she said softly. "I like hearing what's underneath it." That seemed to pass Lily's test. She nodded once and disappeared into another room. Mrs. Givens sighed. She's shy with new folks, especially when she knows they're here to talk about what comes next. Cole glanced toward the hallway. "How's she been?" "Brave," the old woman said, "but she's losing ground in school. Hard to sleep. She wakes calling for her mama some nights. We do what we can," but her eyes flicked to her husband, who leaned against the table, chest rising in slow, shallow pulls. "This ranch is more than we can handle now." Lauren looked at Cole then, really looked at him. The power suit, the measured calm, all of it stripped bare by the sight of an 8-year-old and a dying man. He reached for the envelope in his coat and laid it on the table bills. Checks, doctor receipts. "These should cover the next few months," he said quietly. "Mr. Givens lifted a trembling hand. "You've already done too much, son." Cole shook his head. "No, sir, not enough." The old man's eyes softened. "Your sister would be proud you kept your promise." Cole's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Lauren saw a man holding together something fragile with nothing but willpower. "Later." Lily tugged Lauren's sleeve and whispered, "Do you want to see the barn cats?" Lauren followed her outside. The sun was sinking, turning the fields gold and long-shadowed. The barn was old but warm, straw rustling underfoot. A handful of kittens darted between bales, tiny streaks of fur and mischief. Lily crouched, coaxing one into her hands. "Uncle Cole says he's allergic, but I think he's just pretending so. I don't make him take one home." Lauren smiled. "He seems honest enough to me." The girl looked up, solemn. "Honest doesn't mean he isn't sad." Lauren froze, the words cutting through the barn dust like a beam of light. "Why do you think he's sad?" "Because he reads to me, but his eyes go somewhere else," Lily said simply. She set the kitten down and brushed straw from her knees. "He doesn't talk about my mama. I think he thinks I'll forget her if he doesn't say her name." Lauren's throat burned. "Do you want to forget her?" Lily shook her head. "No, I just don't want it to hurt so much." From the doorway, Cole's voice carried softly. "Dinner's ready. Lil." Lily darted past him toward the house. He lingered a moment, one hand on the frame, watching the child disappear inside. "She's right. You know," Lauren said quietly. "You are sad." He didn't look at her. "It's easier to be busy." They ate around a small kitchen table set with chipped plates and stew that tasted like home. Conversation drifted weather, crops, memories of Cole's sister, a laugh here and there that sounded like borrowed light. After dinner, Lauren helped Lily pick out a book. The child chose Charlotte's Web. Cole sat beside her on the couch, reading aloud. His voice, normally clipped and precise, softened around the edges of each word. Lily leaned against him, half listening, half fighting sleep. When the last sentence faded, she murmured, "You missed a page." Cole smiled. "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did," she said, pointing, where Charlotte says goodbye. He looked down, throat working. "I didn't want to read that part tonight." Lily frowned. "But it's the best part." Lauren stood in the doorway, watching as he found the page again and read the words carefully, like a prayer. By the time they left, the stars were fierce and close, the kind you only saw far from city lights. Lauren wrapped her coat tighter, the chill biting her fingers. Cole walked her to the truck, pausing once to look back at the farmhouse. A thin curl of smoke rose from the chimney, fading into the cold dark. "Now you understand," he said softly. Lauren nodded. "You're not rehearsing anything, are you?" "No," he said. "I'm just trying to learn how to show up." She looked at him, at the man who was supposed to be calculating and shrewd, standing under the Wyoming stars with sorrow written across his face like an old map. And for the first time, she believed every word he'd said. The evening wind carried the smell of sage and cold iron through the open door. Lauren lingered by the mantel while Cole helped Mr. Gibbons to the sofa, careful, patient. The old woman busied herself in the kitchen, humming a hymn that trembled between breaths. On the wall above the fireplace hung a collection of framed photographs, birthdays, faded Polaroids, a graduation cap balanced on a girl's curls. Then her eyes stopped. At the far end of the row was a single photo printed on metal, a sleek regional jet streaking across a pale sky, sunlight flashing off its nose. The inscription below read, "Whitmore Flight Academy in memory of our graduate, Ellen Harrington, 1989-2014. Lauren's breath hitched so hard she thought the room might hear it. Her fingers went cold. The aircraft was unmistakable, a CRJ 700 series, the same model that had gone down over Kansas 7 years earlier, the crash that had taken her husband. Ethan! She forced herself to blink, to breathe, to keep her voice steady when Mrs. Givens called from the kitchen. "Sweet tea or coffee?" "Dear, coffee's fine," she managed, turning slightly so no one saw her face. Her pulse thudded in her throat. The photo glinted under the lamplight clean, innocent and merciless. She folded her arms, nails pressing into her palms until pain steadied her. When Cole returned from tucking Lily into bed, Lauren had already stepped outside. She stood by the fence, staring out at the flat horizon where dusk was eating the last of the color. He joined her without a word, his boots crunching the frost-hardened soil. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Fine," she said. It wasn't true. They left not long after. The drive back toward Denver was quiet, the road a dark ribbon unspooling beneath the headlights. For miles she said nothing, watching telephone poles flick past like clock ticks. But silence had weight, and she couldn't carry it forever. "The plane in that photo," she said finally, her voice low. "It was a CRJ 700, wasn't it?" Cole glanced at her, then back at the road. "It was—" She waited. He seemed to know what was coming. "My husband was on one of those," she said. "Ethan Hale, maintenance supervisor for Mesa Air. He died when the hydraulics failed on descent. They said it was maintenance supervisor error, but it wasn't." Her words came flat, practiced the way you tell a story that's been filed too long in a drawer. Cole didn't interrupt. He just listened, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, bare, almost confessional. Harrington Aerotech supplied the auxiliary hydraulics unit on that series, not just for Mesa, for half the regional fleet that year. Lauren's stomach twisted. "Then you." He nodded once. "My company." She turned toward the window, watching her reflection blur in the dark glass. "So, that's the connection," she said quietly. "You lost your sister, and I lost my husband to the same metal." He flinched, but didn't deny it. "We issued voluntary bulletins after the first failure reports," he said. "Advisories for replacement, not recalls. The FAA didn't require it. We stayed within the law." "The law," she repeated, bitterness rising. "That's convenient." He didn't argue. The silence between them thickened until it felt like another passenger in the car. After a long while, he said, "I've lived in that gray area too long. Profit margins, liability clauses, words that make you forget what they cost in real lives." Lauren stared ahead, blinking against the burn behind her eyes. "You knew about me when you asked for this arrangement, didn't you?" "No," he said quickly, almost sharply. "Not until just now." She studied his face, tired, hollowed by guilt, and somehow she believed him. But belief didn't stop the ache. They pulled off the highway at a rest stop, miles of open land stretching under the moonlight. Lauren stepped out, the cold biting at her lungs. She walked a few paces into the emptiness, the sound of gravel under her boots the only thing anchoring her. Cole followed, but kept his distance. "I can't do this," she said, voice trembling, not knowing what your company's part in it was. "It feels like a betrayal," he finished softly. "I understand." She wrapped her arms around herself. The Wyoming wind pressed against her coat, and she wished for something to hold, something solid. "I wanted to walk away from all of it years ago," Cole said, "but walking didn't fix anything. It didn't bring my sister back. It didn't stop more failures. I stayed because someone had to face it from the inside." Lauren turned, searching his face for lies. There weren't any, only weariness and something else that looked like penance. The world around them was quiet except for the wind sliding through the brush. Somewhere in the distance, a train's horn moaned across the plains. Lonely and long, Lauren exhaled shakily. "You could have told me sooner?" "I should have," he admitted. "But I needed you to see Lily first, to understand what this was really about." She lowered her gaze. "A child doesn't erase what happened." "No," he said, "but she might be the one thing I can still protect." The honesty in his voice cut deeper than any apology could. Lauren turned back toward the truck, heart pounding. She wanted to tell him goodbye, to end it before the ghost swallowed her whole. But when she opened her coat to reach for her gloves, a folded piece of paper slipped free, fluttering to the ground. She bent to pick it up and froze. It was Lily's drawing. 3 stick figures, hand in hand beneath a crooked yellow sun. 1 tall man, 1 woman with bright orange hair, and a small girl between them, smiling wide. Across the bottom, written in careful block letters, "Me, Uncle Cole, and Miss Lauren." Her throat closed. Cole watched her, eyes softening as he saw what she held. "She drew that for you before we left," he said quietly. "Said she liked how you listened." Lauren stared at the simple lines, the shaky crayon strokes. Something inside her, wound tight for years, loosened a fraction. She looked up at Cole, the moonlight carving shadows across his face. "I'm staying," she said finally, the words tasting of both surrender and resolve. He didn't thank her. He just nodded once, the smallest motion, as if gratitude would cheapen it. The wind swept across the plain again, cold and endless. Lauren folded the drawing carefully and tucked it back into her coat pocket close to her heart, where it could stay warm. The sea greeted them before the skyline did a vast gray sheet stretching into the horizon, breathing salt and wind through the open car windows. Newport carried the kind of chill that bit gently, like a polite warning. Lauren could taste the Atlantic in the air, sharp and old. Their rented cottage sat on a bluff above the harbor, all white shingles and brass fixtures that gleamed even under clouded skies. From the balcony, she could see the waves breaking against black rocks, gulls cutting through the air like torn paper. Inside, a woman waited by the dining table, a small, precise figure with silver earrings and an aura of professional patience. Ms. Mayfield. Cole introduced, protocol consultant. "She's here to help us not embarrass ourselves." Mayfield smiled tightly. "Let's begin with proximity. Sit closer." "No, closer. You're married, not negotiating an acquisition." Lauren slid an inch nearer on the sofa. Cole's scent carried faint cedar and something warmer underneath. The air between them felt thick, almost fragile. "Eye contact," Mayfield instructed, warm but restrained. 2 beats at a time, then a shared glance when someone mentions family. Lauren tried. Cole's gaze caught hers, calm but unsettling, like being read silently. 2 beats became 3. Mayfield clapped once. Good. Now, hand placement, subtle, supportive. Try resting your hand on his arm when you laugh. "I'm not much of a laugher," Lauren murmured. "Learn," Mayfield said briskly. Society wives laugh with their eyes, not their teeth. The rest of the afternoon went much the same postures, anecdotes, the choreography of affection, Every move felt rehearsed, hollow. Lauren stumbled on his middle name during an introduction exercise, and Cole forgot the anniversary they were supposed to have invented. By 6 o'clock, they were both exhausted, polite to the point of absurdity. When Mayfield finally left with a binder of notes and a warning about emotional authenticity, Lauren collapsed onto the couch. "Do people really live like this?" she muttered. "Apparently," Cole said, loosening his tie. "Performing normalcy is harder than I expected. Maybe because you pick someone who's bad at pretending." He gave a half smile. "Or because I'm worse." Outside, wind gathered over the ocean, pushing dark clouds across the moon. The forecast had hinted at storms. By nightfall, thunder was crawling up the coast. Lauren retreated to her room, one of the separate accommodations she'd insisted upon. She tried to read but couldn't. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the window panes until the lights flickered once, twice, and went out entirely. The house sighed into darkness. She fumbled for her phone, its weak glow painting her hands in blue light. From the hallway came a faint clatter, then a muffled curse. Following the sound, she found Cole in the kitchen, barefoot, wielding a flashlight between his teeth and a frying pan in his hand. "Are you cooking in a blackout?" she asked. He jumped slightly, flashlight wobbling. "Trying to... Generators down. I found bread and cheese." "Grilled cheese," she said. Amused. "Comfort food," he replied. "My culinary range begins and ends here." She stepped closer, leaning against the counter as lightning flashed through the window, illuminating his makeshift operation pan on a gas burner. Cheese slices stacked unevenly, one already half charred. "You're burning it," she said. "I noticed," without thinking. She reached for the handle, steadying the pan as he adjusted the flame. Their hands brushed. Heat flared not from the stove this time. The pan wobbled dangerously. "Hold it still," she murmured. He did, jaw tightening. The smell of toasted bread filled the dark kitchen, warm and ordinary. When the first sandwich landed on a plate, they stood side by side, chewing in companionable silence. Rain lashed against the glass. Somewhere in the distance, waves broke against the cliffs. Cole laughed quietly. All the money in the world. And here we are, sharing a burnt sandwich. Lauren smiled into the dim light. "Maybe this is the most real we've been all day." He looked at her then, not the way Mayfield had coached, but the way a man looks when the walls inside him shift a little. The air felt different, less staged, more human. When she reached for the second pan, her hand brushed his sleeve. He flinched just barely, but enough for her to notice. "Sorry," she said, pulling back. "It's fine," he murmured, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. The flashlight rolled on the counter, casting its beam upward, catching his wrist. That's when she saw it, a thin, pale scar running from the base of his thumb toward the vein. Jagged, old. She didn't speak at first. The kitchen felt smaller, filled with the hum of rain and the faint hiss of the burner. He caught her looking. "It was from the crash," he said quietly. "The night I went to identify the wreckage." Her stomach tightened. "You went yourself." "There weren't many pieces left to identify," he said. "I slipped climbing through what was left of the fuselage. It didn't feel like pain at the time, just noise and fire." Lauren's throat ached. She wanted to reach for him, but didn't. "You don't have to." "I do," he said simply. "I used to think grief faded if you buried it under enough work. But it doesn't fade. It just waits for you in the quiet." Lightning flashed again, bright enough to turn everything silver for a second. The counter, the pan, the two of them standing too close. When the thunder followed, she didn't step back. "You said you'd lived in the gray too long," she said softly. "Maybe this is you walking out of it." He looked down at her, expression unreadable. "Maybe you're the first person who made me want to." The power flickered back to life then, abrupt and jarring. Lights flared overhead. Both blinked, caught between embarrassment and relief. "Guess the universe didn't want us in the dark too long," she said, breaking the silence. Or it's warning us we talk too much when it's quiet. She laughed, low and genuine. Good grilled cheese, by the way. Don't lie, he said. I'm not, she replied. It's terrible, but it's honest. Cole smiled, and for a fleeting moment, the man who had spent years hiding behind contracts and control looked simply human, barefoot, humbled, alive. Lauren rinsed the plates, the warmth of the kitchen seeping into her bones. When she turned to leave, she glanced back once. He was leaning against the counter, head bowed, the faintest trace of peace crossing his features. Outside, the storm began to move east, leaving behind only the whisper of wet streets and the lingering scent of toasted bread. The Beaumont estate looked like a museum built to outlive emotion. White columns, manicured hedges, windows that had seen too many winters. Chauffeurs lined the circular drive like chess pieces, and the sea wind carried a chill that made Lauren's pulse quicken despite her practiced calm. Cole offered his arm as they ascended the marble steps. Ready, define ready, she murmured. Inside, the ballroom gleamed under chandeliers older than the country's tax code. Oil portraits of Beaumont ancestors lined the walls, stern men with quills and ledgers. Women posed beside grand pianos and family crests. A string quartet tuned softly in the corner. The reception wasn't just social, it was scrutiny in silk and pearls. Every conversation seemed half audition, half trial. Waiters floated by with champagne, their shoes whispering against the parquet floor. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, announced a butler who looked carved from marble, heads turned as if on command. Lauren felt her stomach dip. The last time she'd been in a room like this, it was to receive condolences, not applause. Cole's hand brushed hers briefly, public gesture, private reassurance. At the center of the room stood Eleanor Beaumont, matriarch of the dynasty, silver hair swept into an impeccable chignon, her gaze, sharp and assessing, could have sliced glass. Mr. Harrington, she said, extending her hand with regal precision. You've made quite the entrance. We were beginning to think you'd forgotten us. Hard to forget the people holding half of New England's contracts, Cole replied, smooth but respectful. And this must be your wife, Eleanor said, turning to Lauren. I've read much about you, though. Curiously, none of it in the press. Lauren smiled. I find life runs smoother when I stay off the page. A faint murmur of approval rippled through the women nearby. Eleanor's eyes narrowed just slightly, an adversary testing the other's footing. Tell me, Mrs. Harrington, she said, what does stability look like to you? My late husband used to say it's the one thing no fortune can guarantee. The question hung heavy, deliberate, a test. Lauren took a slow breath, aware of the eyes on her, the glittering board members, the curious socialites, Cole himself, silent but steady at her side. Stability, she began, isn't a word people use much until they lose it. Her voice was calm, unpolished, carrying the timbre of someone who'd lived what she said. To me, it's a chair with four legs: truth, work, forgiveness. And showing up, you take away one. The whole thing tips over. But if you keep repairing the legs, it'll hold, even when the floor shakes. For a moment, you could have heard the tick of a watch. Then, as if on cue, someone exhaled. The air softened. Eleanor tilted her head, something like genuine interest flickering in her eyes. A carpenter's wisdom, she said. An engineer's widow, Lauren replied gently. The matriarch's lips twitched approval, disguised as neutrality. Well said. Cole caught the subtle shift, the Beaumont board members leaning forward, expressions thawing. Not because of him, but because of her. Her authenticity carried a weight no marketing firm could manufacture. Throughout dinner, the performance continued, laughter at the right volume, anecdotes shared on cue. Cole played the attentive husband with quiet ease, his hand occasionally brushing hers under the table, each touch grounding rather than possessive. The meal stretched over hours: lobster bisque, roast duck, endless courses served under candlelight. Lauren found herself drifting between roles: audience, actress, anchor. She fielded questions about Denver, about balancing marriage and career, her answers honest enough to sound practiced and practiced enough to feel honest. It wasn't until dessert arrived that the true test came. A young man at the far end of the table, a Beaumont grandson with the easy arrogance of inherited wealth, leaned forward, smirking. "So, tell us, Mr. Harrington," he said, "with all your travel, your deals, your schedules, how do you two find time for, well, a family?" The question was honeyed but barbed, a trap disguised as curiosity. Cole set down his glass carefully. His reflection glimmered in the crystal, composed but edged. "Our family is small," he said evenly. "For now." Oh, the grandson pressed. Expecting, Lauren felt her heartbeat in her throat. Cole's gaze didn't waver. "My niece," he said. "She's 8. We intend to bring her home soon." A faint ripple passed through the table. Whispers its side glances. The word intend did the work of 1,000 explanations. It made him look responsible, deliberate, human. "Lovely," Eleanor said after a moment, her tone carefully neutral. "Children have a way of grounding a household, or undoing it," muttered the grandson, too low for most to hear. But Lauren did, and before she could stop herself, she smiled, not the polite kind, but the one born of something fiercer, only if the grown-ups forget who's watching. Eleanor's laugh, rich and genuine, broke the tension. "Touché, Mrs. Harrington. I do believe I like you." Cole exhaled quietly, shoulders easing. Across the table, a few board members nodded approvingly. The tide had turned. Later, as the party dissolved into smaller clusters of conversation, Lauren drifted to the balcony. The ocean below churned under a half moon, the air damp with salt and roses from the garden. Cole joined her, loosening his tie. "You were extraordinary," he said. "I told the truth." She replied, "That's cheaper than rehearsal." He smiled. "You just closed the deal before I even opened my mouth." Maybe people are tired of polished. Maybe they're just ready to believe something real. From inside, faint laughter echoed through the hall, champagne glasses clinking like wind chimes. Lauren leaned against the railing, the sea breeze teasing a loose strand of hair across her cheek. "Tomorrow. They'll talk about the numbers," Cole said quietly. "But tonight, they'll remember you." She looked out over the dark waves. "Then, let's hope they remember the right things." He was silent for a moment. Then, softly, "You saved this deal?" Lauren turned toward him. "No," she said. "I just reminded them what steadiness looks like. You're the one who has to live it." A gull's cry broke the quiet, swept away by the wind. Cole's expression gentled. "I'm trying." The clock inside chimed midnight. Somewhere behind them, the string quartet struck its final note. Lauren looked back at the glittering room, then at the man beside her, half in shadow, half illuminated by moonlight, a study in restraint and hope. The waves below rolled and broke against the rocks, steady as breath. "I think," she said softly, "you're doing better than you think." He turned toward her, something unspoken hovering between them. Gratitude, maybe, or the beginning of something harder to name. And just as quickly, he looked away, the moment passing like a heartbeat swallowed by the sea. The storm had passed, leaving Newport rinsed and shining under a pale dawn. Gulls wheeled above the harbor, their cries sharp against the hush that follows a long night. The house smelled faintly of salt, toast, and damp wool. Lauren sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed, phone balanced in her hand, waiting for the FaceTime screen to connect. It was past midnight in Denver, but Owen picked up on the second ring. His hair stuck up at odd angles, a hoodie slung over one shoulder, the look of a boy halfway between child and man. "You're glowing," he said, squinting. "Must be the Billionaire lighting." Lauren smiled despite herself. "It's just the sunrise." "Right," he said, leaning closer to the camera. "So, fake marriage thing. How's that going? She sighed, rubbing her temple. Complicated? He raised an eyebrow. That's what adults say when it's actually a disaster. Not a disaster, she said. Just a long story. Owen folded his arms. I've got time. My algebra homework ran away. She laughed softly, then grew quiet. Behind her, the curtains shifted with the morning breeze. It's not what you think, she began. Mom, he cut in. Serious now? Are you falling for your boss? The question landed heavier than the teasing tone suggested. For a moment, she could only stare at his face on the screen, so much like his father's in the eyes, though tempered with her stubbornness. I'm not falling for anyone, she said carefully. I'm protecting a child, and trying to tell the truth, even when the truth isn't photogenic. Photogenic, he repeated. That's a weird word for love. This isn't love, she said, though her voice wavered. It's responsibility. Sometimes grown-ups agree to something hard because it helps someone else sleep at night. Owen studied her, the kind of look that felt older than his years. You used to say no good thing starts with a lie. I still believe that, she said quietly. That's why I'm trying to make sure this doesn't stay one. From the hallway came the soft knock of knuckles on wood. Cole's voice. Everything okay? Lauren turned toward the door. Yeah, just talking with Owen. Cole hesitated, then stepped inside, still in his shirt sleeves, hair damp from a shower. Morning. Owen, he said, offering a half smile. Owen tilted the phone to get a better look. So this is the guy? This is the guy, Lauren said. Cole leaned toward the camera, his expression calm but a little nervous. I've heard a lot about you. Good things, I hope, Owen said, smirking. Mostly that you're smart enough to see through everything, Cole replied. That checks out, Owen said. So, what's your angle? Lauren shot him a warning look, but Cole lifted a hand. Fair question. My angle, he said slowly, is trying to do right after doing wrong for a long time. I made choices in business that hurt people I never met, and I thought if I stayed busy, it would count as fixing things. It didn't. Owen's brow furrowed. So, you're helping a kid now to make up for it. In part, Cole admitted, but mostly because she deserves better than the mess I made. Your mom's helping me make sure she gets that chance. The boy didn't respond right away. The silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of waves outside. Cole went on, quieter now. You don't owe me anything. Owen. But I gave your mom my word. I'd keep this arrangement decent and truthful. You can hold me to that. If I fail her or that child, you call me out. Owen leaned closer to the screen, his face serious. Then he said, deadpan, if you hurt her, I'll make you go viral. Cole blinked, then chuckled. Fair. Public accountability's efficient. Lauren groaned, but couldn't stop smiling. You two are impossible. Owen's grin softened. Just watching out for you, Mom. You always pick the hard jobs. They tend to find me, she said. Yeah, that's what you said about coaching Little League, he teased. Don't remind me, she said, laughing now. I still have nightmares about the glove that caught fire. Legendary, Owen said. Okay, I should get some sleep. Just be careful. Okay. Her heart tightened. Always. Before hanging up, Owen looked past her, meeting Cole's gaze through the phone. I'm giving you a probation period, he said. Don't blow it. I'll try not to, Cole said. Good, Owen said. And for the record, grilled cheese is the wrong move if you're trying to impress her. Cole raised a brow, noted. When the call ended, the room felt quieter. Lauren set the phone on the nightstand and exhaled. Well, that went better than I expected. He's sharp, Cole said. He doesn't let you hide? No, she said. He's the only person who never has. Cole leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. He's right, though. You do pick the hard jobs. Occupational hazard, she said, smiling faintly. He nodded, thoughtful. I meant what I told him, he said after a moment. You can hold me to it, too. She met his eyes. I intend to. They stood there for a while, the morning light shifting between them. The ocean breeze pushed through the curtains, carrying the scent of salt and something sweet from the gardens below. Finally, Lauren said, "We should head to the meeting soon." The Beaumont follow-up. "Right," Cole said, though his gaze lingered. "And then," she said, "we keep doing the hard parts until they stop feeling impossible." He smiled at that slow, genuine. "I like your math." "It's not math," she said softly. "It's faith disguised as stubbornness." Outside, church bells began to ring from somewhere in town, the notes rolling over the water. Lauren gathered her jacket, still feeling Owen's words echoing in her chest, both warning and comfort. As she turned toward the door, Cole reached for his cufflinks, fumbling slightly. "He really said he'd make me go viral." "Oh, he meant it," Lauren said, laughing under her breath. "You should probably behave." Cole grinned. "Then maybe I'll start with another grilled cheese without burning it this time." Lauren paused, meeting his eyes. "Small steps. Mr. Harrington." He nodded. "Small steps." He echoed, his voice steady now, almost peaceful. And as they left the room, the light through the windows caught the edge of her reflection in the mirror, calm, strong. A woman who'd stopped running from ghosts and started walking beside them. The garden glittered under the late afternoon sun, every petal and glass catching the light like a stage cue. A string quartet played somewhere near the rose arch, and waiters in white jackets wove through the guests with champagne flutes balanced on silver trays. The Beaumont estate was showing off, its wealth disguised as charm. Lauren stood at Cole's side, her hand resting lightly on his arm. They'd practiced the gesture with Ms. Mayfield days ago, but now it felt effortless, not choreographed. The sea air carried the scent of salt and lavender, the sound of laughter rising and falling like the tide. She had learned his rhythms in the past week, the faint pause before he spoke, when something mattered, the way his right hand brushed the cufflink on his left wrist when he was thinking too hard. He had learned hers too. Somehow the tilt of her head that meant stop talking before you say too much. The look in her eyes that told him when to stay silent. They were no longer pretending to understand each other. They actually did. "Smile," Cole murmured, leaning close as a group of investors approached. "I am smiling," she whispered back. "Just not like a billboard." He chuckled under his breath, the sound low and warm. They made small talk beneath the pergola, the way practiced people did when they knew every word mattered. A senator's wife complimented Lauren's dress. A Beaumont cousin commented on how refreshingly grounded the couple seemed. Cole's replies were smooth, gracious. Lauren's were softer, but more real. She noticed how people leaned toward her when she spoke, as if sincerity had its own gravity. It wasn't until dessert trays appeared that she saw him, the man in a linen suit near the hedge, holding a glass of white wine and watching her a moment too long. His smile was charming, polished, and somehow deliberate. "Who's that?" she murmured. "Beaumont's counsel," Cole said quietly. "Wade Granger. He handles their estate and corporate vetting. Sharp, polite, and exactly the kind of man who tests what can't be Googled." Lauren's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. "A background sting?" Cole nodded. "Stay close. He'll circle." It didn't take long. Within minutes, Wade approached with a genial grin, extending a hand. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington," he said. "Your speech at dinner, impressive balance of humility and confidence. You'd be surprised how few people can pull that off." Cole smiled, compliment accepted. "And you," Wade said, turning to Lauren, "spoke beautifully about stability last night. The chair with 4 legs. Wasn't it truth, work, forgiveness, and showing up?" She inclined her head. "I'm glad you remembered. Hard not to," he said easily. "May I borrow your lovely wife for a moment?" "Mr. Harrington." Cole's expression didn't flicker, but Lauren felt the faint shift in his posture, the alertness of a man who'd lived too long on cautious ground. "Of course," he said evenly. "I'll be right here." Wade led her a few steps away toward the shade of an old oak. His tone stayed pleasant, almost playful. I apologize if this feels intrusive. The Beaumont family has to ensure their partnerships are built on truth, not theater. I'm sure you understand. Lauren smiled faintly. I do. But if you're here to test me, you'll have to make the questions interesting. He laughed. Fair enough. Let's start with something small. Tell me what was Mr. Harrington doing the night the Newport power went out. Lauren didn't hesitate. Burning a grilled cheese. Wade blinked. Excuse me. He was barefoot, she continued, and terrible at it. The smoke alarm almost went off. She smiled. He still insists it was the best meal of the week. Wade chuckled, clearly caught off guard. You must be joking. No, she said softly. I burned my thumb trying to help him flip it. He has a scar on his wrist from a night long before that one he doesn't talk about often. You can tell the difference between the two if you look closely. One came from trying to feed someone. The other came from trying to forgive himself. For a long moment, Wade didn't answer. The sea breeze ruffled the leaves above them, scattering light like confetti across the grass. Then he cleared his throat, the levity gone from his eyes. That's quite a thing to know about someone. It's the only way to know someone, she said simply. The rest is just biography. Wade nodded slowly. You're right. Forgive the intrusion, Mrs. Harrington. We've all been burned by appearances before. He extended a hand. She took it. Good night, he said quietly. Mrs. Harrington. The title was nothing more than protocol, but the way he said it, warm and certain, made her chest tighten all the same. It wasn't real, not legally, not even in the way they both pretended it to be. But for one heartbeat, it felt like it was. When she returned to Cole's side, he gave her a questioning look. What did he ask? She took a sip of her champagne, hiding a smile. About the night of the blackout, and you told him the truth, she said. Cole raised an eyebrow. Which version of it? The one with cheese. He laughed then, quiet, genuine, caught between relief and affection. I should have guessed. They stayed a while longer, mingling under the lanterns as dusk painted the garden in gold and lavender. Every movement between them had become unspoken choreography, his hand at her back guiding her through a crowd, her glance steering him away from a question, their laughter sinking without rehearsal. It wasn't performance anymore. It was fluency. As the evening wound down, guests began to drift toward the veranda overlooking the ocean. The quartet shifted to a softer melody, violins blending with the rhythmic crash of waves. Cole leaned close enough that she could feel his breath warm against her ear. You handled him, he said quietly. I wasn't handling, she replied. I was answering. He looked at her then, a small smile tugging at the edge of his mouth. That's why they believe us. Do you, she asked before she could stop herself. He hesitated, eyes searching hers. I think belief is a dangerous luxury, he said softly. But tonight, I wanted to. The music swelled, lanterns swayed. For a moment, they stood together in the calm between questions, between truths, between what they were and what they might have been if life had chosen differently. When Wade passed by again, he nodded respectfully, his expression unreadable, but his words lingered in Lauren's mind long after the gentle, deliberate Mrs. Harrington, a fiction that had started to sound dangerously like hope. She turned toward the sea, letting the salt air fill her lungs. The waves below crashed steady as a heartbeat, endless and sure, and when Cole's fingers brushed hers, light, uncertain, almost accidental, she didn't pull away. The storm didn't break with thunder this time. It came through a screen. Lauren was halfway through her morning coffee when her phone lit up with a notification she almost ignored until she saw the headline, Harrington's hired wife inside the billionaire's PR marriage. Her stomach dropped. By the time she reached the bottom of the article, her hands had gone cold. There were photos grainy, zoomed from across the gardens at Beaumont's event. She and Cole, laughing near the roses, the grilled cheese night, somehow captured through a window, the faint reflection of candlelight, making it look more intimate than it had been. Even one shot of her at the ranch in Wyoming, bending to pick up Lily's toy horse. The captions burned: widowed assistant turned corporate actress, the Harrington redemption hoax. She scrolled through the comments section, each line sharper than glass. Pathetic. Everyone's got a price. She's too plain for a scandal. The knock at her door came before she could think. Cole stood there, phone in hand, his expression unreadable. "You saw it," she said. He nodded once. "The board has too." "What happens now?" Marjorie called. "Emergency session in 30 minutes. He hesitated. "She's furious." Lauren exhaled shakily. "She'll want a scapegoat?" "She already has one," Cole said quietly. "Us." They drove to the office in silence, the rain beginning to fall again, thin, gray, relentless. By the time they reached the Harrington Industries Tower, the street outside was a mess of cameras and umbrellas. Flashbulbs exploded against the windshield like lightning. Cole didn't flinch. "Keep your head down," he murmured. "They'll twist anything." "Twisting's their job," she said. Inside, the boardroom was a battlefield of voices. Marjorie Langley, chairwoman of the board, stood at the head of the table, pearls gleaming against her navy suit. Her tone was razor-thin calm. "Cole, we've managed plenty of PR messes together," she began. "But this is rot from the inside. Someone in your own office leaked those photos. The optics are catastrophic." Cole leaned forward, jaw set. "Then we find who did it. Optics don't care about guilt." Marjorie snapped. "Investors are calling. The Beaumont contract is in jeopardy. The press thinks your niece is a prop, and she glanced at Lauren, voice dripping disdain. "Your assistant is a paid actress." Lauren kept her gaze steady, even as her chest ached. Marjorie turned back to Cole. "We can still control this. Deny the family connection. Say she was hired for communications. Quietly terminate her contract. Show decisiveness." Cole didn't move. "You want me to lie? I want you to protect this company," she said, eyes flashing. "And your legacy." He leaned back slowly, the silence stretching. "My legacy means nothing if it's built on throwing a child off the boat." Marjorie stiffened. "Cole?" "No," he said, voice firm now. "We're not erasing Lily because someone saw an easy headline. She's family. This company is supposed to build aircraft that carry lives safely through storms. Maybe it's time we remember what that means." The room fell into stunned quiet. Marjorie's expression hardened. "Then you'll take full responsibility when the board votes no confidence." "I will," he said, "but I won't take part in a cover-up." Lauren swallowed the lump in her throat. Every word cost him something. She could see it in the tightening of his jaw, the quiet exhaustion behind his eyes. When the meeting ended, no one spoke to her. Security was already waiting by the elevator. Two men in discreet suits, apologetic but firm. "Ms. Hale," one said. "The board has requested you vacate the premises immediately. For optics." "For optics," she repeated, the words hollow in her mouth. She gathered her bag, her coat. When she stepped into the hallway, the cameras were already there, lenses flashing, voices shouting questions. Cole appeared beside her before she could take another step. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled up, rain starting to darken the shoulders of his shirt. "Where are you going?" she whispered. "With you," he said simply. "Cole, that's suicide optics?" he said dryly. "Let them see what it looks like when we walk out together." The doors opened, and the swarm descended. Reporters shouted over one another. "Mr. Harrington, is the marriage real? Did you pay her? Who is the child?" Cole kept his arm lightly around Lauren's shoulders, steady as granite. "We have nothing to hide," he said, voice calm, carrying above the chaos, "and nothing to sell." They stepped through the rain toward the waiting car, each flash of light freezing them mid-step, her hair caught by the wind, his hand closing around the handle of her suitcase. It felt cinematic, tragic, absurd. "Cole," she said quietly as they reached the curb, "you just burned every bridge you had." He met her eyes. Then we build new ones. Ones that can hold real weight. The cameras snapped, relentless. For a brief second, Lauren thought of the first time she'd walked into his office. The man behind the glass wall asking her to act like his wife. She hadn't known then that the role would demand more honesty than any truth she'd ever told. Now, standing beside him in the rain, she realized the performance had ended long ago. He opened the car door for her, rain dripping from his hair, his voice low but steady. "We'll fix this. Together." She slid inside, watching him circle to the other side. The crowd surged, shouting, flashing, recording every heartbeat of scandal. As the car pulled away, she caught one last glimpse of the tower through the blur of rain, a mirrored monolith swallowing the clouds. Inside, her phone buzzed again with another alert. Trending, shot, hired wife. The words glowed like an accusation. She turned it face down. Outside, the storm thickened. Inside, neither spoke. Only when the city lights blurred into streaks of gold on wet glass did Lauren finally whisper, "You didn't have to come with me." Cole looked out the window, voice quiet but certain. "Yes, I did." The car rolled forward, headlights slicing through the rain, and for the first time in days, she let herself exhale, not relief, not safety, just the fragile, stubborn act of breathing in the middle of ruin. The auditorium smelled of rain-soaked wool and burnt coffee. Reporters filled every seat, their murmurs a low tide of cynicism and curiosity. Outside, the Denver skyline blurred under gray clouds. No banners, no PR lighting, no luxury backdrops, just a wooden podium, a few microphones, and two people who looked as if they hadn't slept in days. Cole stood center stage, jacket unbuttoned, sleeves rolled. His tie was gone, and for the first time, Lauren realized how human he looked. Not the billionaire whose name graced aircraft hangars, but a man carrying the wreckage of both reputation and conscience. "Thank you for coming," he began. His voice was steady, though the room's collective skepticism pressed like static. "I won't take long." Flashbulbs popped. He didn't flinch. "There's been speculation about my personal life, my company, and a child named Lily. Some of it is false, some of it is true. What matters now," he said, pausing, "is what we do next." He gripped the podium lightly, eyes scanning the crowd. "Years ago, my company Harrington Aerotech supplied auxiliary hydraulics units for a regional jet series. We issued voluntary service bulletins, but not mandatory recalls. That decision, my decision, kept us inside the law, but not inside decency. I told myself I was protecting jobs, investors, a vision. In truth, I was protecting myself." The room was silent. Even the hum of the air vents felt distant. Cole continued, voice quieter but sharper now. "When the crash happened, I identified the wreckage personally. I saw what our engineering missed. I swore I'd spend the rest of my life fixing what broke. Instead, I buried the truth under better headlines and expansion plans. Until a child, my sister's child, needed a home, and I realized I couldn't build one out of lies." Lauren watched from the side, her throat tightening. He looked different now, not powerful, not untouchable, just fiercely, painfully honest. "I won't hide her anymore," he said. "Lily is my niece. Her parents are gone. She's the best thing I've ever had a chance to get right, and I will not let fear or profit decide how she enters the world. If the FAA or the federal authorities want to investigate my company, they'll have my full cooperation. No lawyers, no spin." The flashbulbs resumed, faster now, the air filling with questions shouted at once. Cole raised a hand. "You'll get your answers, but not from press statements, from data, from records, from actions." He stepped back, signaling the end. But the moment didn't end. Lauren's pulse quickened. She could feel every pair of eyes swing toward her when she moved. She hadn't planned to. She didn't ask permission. She just walked to the podium, her footsteps echoing in the hush. Cole turned slightly, surprise flickering across his face. But he didn't stop her. The microphones buzzed when she leaned in, Her reflection trembled in a dozen camera lenses. "I'm not a spokesperson," she began, her voice low but clear. "And I'm not here to defend anyone. I'm here because grief made me small for a long time." A whisper ran through the crowd. "When my husband died in that crash," she continued, "I stopped believing in goodness that didn't come with disclaimers. I stopped believing people could do the right thing once it cost them something. I told myself survival was enough. It isn't." Her hands gripped the podium tighter. "This child Lily deserves adults who are done hiding behind what's convenient. And so do the people still living with the fallout of every choice we don't own." The room held still. The flashes stopped. Even the reporters' pens hovered midair. Cole's gaze was fixed on her now, quiet but fierce, like someone witnessing something sacred. Lauren drew a breath. "When Mr. Harrington asked me to act like his wife, I thought it was just a job, a way to survive. But survival isn't living. Living is telling the truth, even when it ruins your schedule." A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the crowd. She smiled faintly. "So, here's mine," she said. "I agreed to this arrangement because I thought it would help a child I'd never met. And now I realize it's helping me remember what it means to stand up again." A young reporter near the front, barely older than Owen, raised her hand timidly. "Ms. Hale," she said, voice hesitant. "May I ask something?" Lauren nodded. "Your scholarship fund, it's been mentioned in filings. Whose name is it?" Under Lauren felt her throat tighten, but she didn't look away. "My husband's," she said simply. "Ethan Hale. He was a maintenance supervisor on that route." Silence. Then a sound she hadn't expected, an audible exhale rippling through the room, the collective breath of people lowering their guard. Lauren didn't cry. She didn't need to. Cole stepped forward then, standing beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Thank you," he said to the reporters, his voice quiet again. "We won't be taking further questions today." They turned from the podium together. The lights felt harsh, the air heavy. But as they stepped into the hallway beyond the stage, the noise fell away, replaced by something like stillness. "Lauren," he said, his voice rough, "you didn't have to." "I did," she interrupted gently. "You told your truth. I needed to tell mine." For a moment, neither spoke. The hallway smelled faintly of rain drifting in through an open service door. Beyond it, downtown, Denver stretched gray and endless, but for the first time. The horizon didn't look like escape. It looked like something that could be rebuilt. Cole ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. "Marjorie's going to hate every word we said." "She'll survive," Lauren said, almost smiling. "So will we." He looked at her, then really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. Not triumph, not relief, just the raw, undeniable sense that the hardest thing they'd ever done had finally set something right. Down the corridor, the echoes of camera shutters faded like rain easing against glass. Lauren turned to him, voice soft. "What happens now?" Cole's reply was barely above a whisper. "We start over, this time on the record." The rain outside deepened, steady and cleansing, as they walked toward the light spilling from the open door. The boardroom had never felt smaller. Rain streaked down the floor-to-ceiling windows, blurring Denver into gray watercolor. The city looked distant, indifferent. Inside, a dozen men and women sat around the mahogany table like jurors who'd already reached their verdict. Marjorie Langley stood at the head, pearls perfectly aligned, voice crisp as glass. "Let's be clear," she said. "This isn't personal, Cole, it's fiduciary. The company cannot withstand another week of scandal." Cole sat at the far end, shoulders straight, face unreadable. Beside him, Lauren's presence was quiet but unmistakable, a steady gravity in a room built for noise. Lawson Price, the company's chief financial officer, leaned forward. His smile was the kind that looked friendly on paper. "Cole, everyone admires your courage yesterday. But the market doesn't reward courage. It rewards control, clean optics. We need a statement of separation from Ms. Hale and the child. Nothing emotional, just clarity. Lauren felt the words hit like a cold wave. The child meant Lily. Not a niece, not family, an obstacle to manage. Cole's jaw tightened. You're asking me to disavow her. I'm asking you to preserve thousands of jobs. Lawson countered smoothly. There's a difference. Marjorie folded her hands. You can't lead a company under federal investigation, not while living in a public domestic arrangement that investors read as instability. Either you disavow both the guardianship and your assistant, or the board moves to suspend you as CEO. The silence afterward was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the faint tap of rain. Cole looked down the length of the table, meeting every gaze. And if I refuse, Marjorie's tone softened to mercy sharpened by intent. Then we vote, and you lose. Cole, this isn't about guilt. It's about trust. Harrington Industries needs to prove it can function without you at the helm. Lauren's hand found his under the table, steady, grounding. She could feel his pulse through his palm, quick but controlled. Cole, she whispered, voice barely audible, take the hit that heals. He turned his head slightly, their eyes meeting. There was no fear there, only understanding. He rose from his chair. You're right, he said. This company can't function under this cloud, and if leadership has become the cloud, then leadership should move aside. Marjorie blinked, taken aback. Are you resigning? No, he said calmly. I'm stepping back temporarily, effective immediately. The room rustled, whispers slicing through the air, but only, he continued, voice firm. If the board agrees to an independent safety audit of all active Harrington aircraft systems, with results made public, no internal reviews, no PR editing. Lawson frowned. Cole, that's suicide. It's integrity. He replied, if we've done things right, the report will prove it. If not, then I'll be the first to answer for it. Marjorie exchanged glances with several directors. You're asking us to risk millions in stock valuation. I'm asking you to earn back the trust we already spent. Lauren watched as silence thickened again. The weight of what he'd just offered settled like dust, real, irreversible. Finally. Marjorie sighed, her composure cracking just slightly. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. Not drama, Cole said quietly. Repair. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Very well. The board accepts your conditions. Effective immediately. You will step aside as acting CEO, pending the audit's completion. Lawson will serve as interim. Lawson smiled thinly. A clean transition. Cole extended his hand across the table. Then, make it official. Flashbulbs went off outside the glass walls, reporters already sensing blood in the air. By the time the meeting adjourned, the headlines were writing themselves. Harrington requests, external probe, steps back. The company's stock dropped 14% by mid-afternoon. By evening, it stabilized at 9%. And beneath the market graphs, a strange thing began to happen. The comment sections changed tone. Words like accountability and honor replaced scandal and fall. That night, in the nearly empty lobby, Lauren found him standing by the windows, hands in his pockets, watching the city lights blur. They'll call you reckless, she said. Let them, he murmured. If the truth costs me the chair, it's still cheaper than what silence costs. She stepped closer. You could have fought them. You had leverage. He glanced at her, eyes tired but alive. Leverage is how I lost myself in the first place. Lauren exhaled, tension easing from her shoulders. You did the right thing. He smiled faintly. So did you. You reminded me what it looks like. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist, the street lamps throwing gold halos on the wet pavement. A delivery truck rumbled past, its reflection warping across the glass like motion through memory. They'll scrutinize every breath you take from now on, she said softly. They already do, he said. But now, at least, I can breathe. She reached into her coat pocket and handed him a folded piece of paper, today's newspaper headline. Below it, circled in blue pen, were 3 words from an op-ed Integrity Still Sells. He looked down, a quiet laugh escaping him. I suppose that's one metric to keep. Lauren shrugged. It's a start. He folded the paper, tucking it into his jacket. Thank you. For what? For saying it when I couldn't take the hit that heals. Her voice softened. You would have done it anyway. Maybe, he said, but you made it feel like a choice, not a punishment. The elevator dinged behind them, empty and waiting. Cole hesitated before stepping inside. You could still walk away. You know, he said, the press will chase me for months. Lauren met his gaze. Then I'll just have to learn how to walk faster. He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen in days, unpolished, human, hopeful. The doors closed between them, and Lauren watched his reflection fade into mirrored steel. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the mountains, a promise of clearer skies beyond. For now. She turned back toward the quiet lobby, her heels echoing across the marble floor. The city alive again with something rare, an honest beginning born from the wreckage of power. Snow had already started to fall by the time Lauren's car turned off the highway and onto the gravel road that led to the old ranch. The wind swept low across the hills, carrying that hollow sound only winter knows, the kind that makes you realize how far you are from the noise of cities. Cole was driving, one hand steady on the wheel, the other resting over a folded envelope in his lap. Neither had spoken much since the call that morning. Just a few words from the nurse. You should come. It's time. Inside the ranch house. Oxygen hissed softly from a tank beside the worn recliner. The smell of eucalyptus and wood smoke filled the air. Sunlight tried to push through the thin curtains but failed. The room glowed instead with the soft amber of a single lamp. Mr. Givens. Lily's grandfather looked smaller than either of them remembered. His breathing came shallow, chest rising like a tired tide. When he opened his eyes, though, the same mischief still flickered there. You made good time, he rasped, nodding toward Cole. Always did like a man who shows up. Cole knelt beside him. You should have told me sooner. I didn't want a parade, the old man said, managing a grin. Besides, Lily had enough fuss for both of us. Lauren stood by the doorway, her coat still on, the snow melting at the hem. She saw Lily curled up on the couch, her small frame wrapped in a blanket, a book half open in her lap. When she looked up, her blue eyes were solemn. Do you still stand the quiet? Lily asked softly. The question hit like a heartbeat, the same words she'd asked that first day, months ago, when Lauren still wore the armor of a woman who didn't plan to stay. Lauren knelt, brushing a stray lock of hair from the child's face. I do, she said, and I brought some of it with me. Lily frowned slightly. How do you bring quiet with space? Lauren whispered, and a door that stays open when you need it. Cole watched them, his expression unreadable, somewhere between gratitude and fear. The social worker from Cheyenne arrived an hour later, her boots still dusted with snow, clipboard tucked under one arm. She had the calm, patient manner of someone who'd seen every version of heartbreak and still believed in paperwork. Mr. Givens, she said gently, pulling up a chair. We need to discuss guardianship. Lily's future can't wait. The old man nodded, each movement costing him breath. I know. Lauren sat beside Lily, while Cole stood near the window, arms crossed. Do you have a stable home environment prepared? The social worker asked. Yes, Lauren said before Cole could speak. Lily will have her own room in Denver, near the park, close to her school. She handed over a folder she'd pulled from her bag. Enrollment transfer papers, counseling plan, medical coverage, everything's ready. The woman flipped through the documents, eyebrows lifting slightly. You've thought this through. I've had time, Lauren replied softly, and practiced standing the quiet. Mr. Givens gave a wheezy laugh that turned into a cough. Cole hurried to steady him, adjusting the oxygen tube. She's the one, the old man murmured when the fit passed. I knew it the first time she came here. You can tell when people show up for reasons that don't make sense on paper. Mr. Givens, the social worker said carefully. You understand what you're signing means full custody transfers to Mr. Harrington and Ms. Hale? He nodded, slow but firm. I do. It's what her parents would have wanted. Cole's her blood. And this one he nodded toward Lauren. She's the kind of woman who remembers birthdays and band-aids. The rest is details. Lily had been silent until then, clutching the edge of the blanket. I don't want you to go, she whispered. The old man reached out a trembling hand. I'm not going far, little bird. You just won't see me when you turn around. But I'll be where the light is. Her small hand found his, tears slipping soundlessly down her cheeks. Go where the light is, he repeated, his voice faint now, even when it hurts to look at it. The papers were signed with a shaky scrawl and a cough that seemed to pull the air straight out of the room. The social worker quietly gathered the documents, giving them a final nod before stepping outside to make her call. Lauren stayed beside the chair, fingers pressed over the old man's hand. We'll take care of her, she promised. Every part. He managed a nod. I know you will. His gaze drifted to Cole. Make sure she gets to keep her wonder. Don't build her world out of guilt. Cole swallowed hard. I won't. The old man smiled faintly, eyes already distant. Then, that's good enough. Outside, the wind howled against the siding, the sound almost like a sigh. When the nurse returned a few minutes later, she placed a gentle hand on Lauren's shoulder. He's resting, she said softly, though they all knew what that meant. Lily slipped from the couch and walked to the window, staring out into the falling snow. Lauren joined her, crouching to her level. He said to follow the light, she whispered. The girl nodded slowly. Does it come back? Yes, Lauren said, voice steady despite the ache in her chest. But sometimes it takes a while to find its way home. They stayed there for a long time, watching the sky change from gray to pearl. Cole stood behind them, silent, holding the signed papers like something sacred. When they finally stepped outside, the snow had thickened into soft flakes, covering the tracks of every arrival and departure. Cole locked the door, the key heavy in his hand. Do we take her tonight? Lauren asked quietly. He nodded. There's nothing left to wait for. Lily reached up, slipping her hand into his. Can we stop by the horses first? He smiled faintly. Of course. As they walked across the yard, Lauren glanced back at the house, light still flickering inside, the faint hum of the oxygen machine still audible through the wall. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure in the window, just a shadow in the lamplight, watching, blessing, letting go. And as they reached the barn, Lily's small voice rose in the stillness. It's not so quiet anymore, she said. Lauren looked down, meeting her gaze. That's because we brought the light with us. The child nodded, satisfied. Snow kept falling, soft and endless. As they began their drive back toward Denver, three souls leaving behind an old life, carrying the fragile beginning of a new one. Denver looked different in December, softer somehow, as if the snow had decided to forgive the city its noise. The apartment smelled of cocoa and cardboard, the scent of beginnings wrapped in small domestic chaos. Half-packed boxes were stacked along the hallway, each labeled in Lauren's tidy handwriting, Lily's room, books, kitchen maybe. Inside the living room, the glow of the TV painted the walls in bursts of color. Owen sat cross-legged on the rug, controller in hand, brow furrowed in mock seriousness. You're cheating, he accused. I'm not. Lily laughed, her voice bubbling with glee as her cartoon cart zoomed ahead of his on the screen. You hit the banana. That's sabotage, he protested, though he was laughing too. She's ruthless. Mom, total assassin. Lauren leaned against the kitchen doorway, smiling into her mug. You shouldn't underestimate an 8-year-old with a competitive streak. Cole was at the table behind her, sorting through emails on his laptop, the faint light catching the silver at his temples. He looked tired, but not hollow anymore. The laughter from the floor filled the room like oxygen, patching spaces that had been empty too long. Lauren set her mug down and joined them, sitting cross-legged beside Lily. Okay, champion, what's the secret to your success? Drive nice, Lily said seriously. And don't look back unless you dropped something you love. Lauren blinked, the words sinking deeper than they had any right to. That's good advice. I read it in a picture book, Lily added, grinning. Owen groaned as the race ended. She beat me again. Best 2 out of 3. Nope, Lily said, stretching. Winners retire at their peak. Lauren laughed, ruffling her hair. Cole glanced up from his laptop, the faintest smile tugging at his mouth. Smart girl, like her mom, Owen teased, and Lauren shot him a look that only made him grin wider. The email chime cut through the laughter. One soft ding, harmless, ordinary. Yet the way Cole froze told her it wasn't. He stared at the screen, lips parted slightly. Then, slowly, he turned the laptop toward her. The message header read, Preliminary audit findings, confidential review. Lauren's pulse quickened. Do you want me to? I'll read it, he said quietly. The room shifted, the easy warmth dimming into a stillness that felt sacred. Cole scrolled through the paragraphs, his eyes moving line by line, face unreadable. Only when he reached the bottom did he exhale shaky, stunned, like air leaving a wound. What is it? Lauren asked softly. He didn't answer right away. He just closed the laptop gently, as though the words inside were fragile. They found the flaw, he said finally. A materials fatigue issue in the auxiliary valves, fixable, contained. That's good news, she said, searching his face. He nodded once. They also found my memos, 3 of them. From 7 years ago? Urging a mandatory recall, Lauren's breath caught. You did, I did, he said. Legal buried them. Said voluntary notices would balance liability and optics. He gave a short, incredulous laugh. That's the phrase they used. Balance liability. She felt something heavy lift from the air, not absolution. Exactly. But space for breath. So, they'll know, she said quietly. People will know you tried. Cole rubbed a hand over his face, leaning back against the wall. His voice was low, ragged. It doesn't bring anyone back. It doesn't fix what happened. No, she agreed, but it ends the lie. He closed his eyes, head tipping back. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the heater and the muffled laughter from the kids restarting their game. Lauren crossed the room and sat beside him on the floor. He didn't speak, just stared ahead, the tension in his shoulders slowly giving way. When he finally looked at her, there was something raw in his expression, relief and grief, tangled together. I spent years building walls out of work, thinking if I stayed busy enough, the ghosts would stop knocking. And did they? He shook his head, a tear catching on his cheek before he could wipe it away. No, but tonight, they're quieter. Lauren reached out, resting her hand lightly on his arm. That's what truth does. It quiets the ghosts, it doesn't erase them, just teaches them to live somewhere else. He let out a sound that was half a laugh, half a breath. You always have a way of making pain sound poetic. Occupational hazard, she said softly. I lived with mine long enough to learn its language. He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment, the space between them filled with something unspoken, something steady, not desperate, like a flame that had learned it didn't need to burn to stay alive. From the living room, Lily's triumphant voice rang out. Owen crashed again. I let her win. Owen shouted, You liar! Lauren and Cole both laughed, the sound quiet but genuine, rippling through the air like a release valve. Cole tilted his head toward the chaos in the next room. That's what home sounds like, isn't it? It's been so long, she said. I almost forgot. Then let's remember together, he murmured. She nodded. Outside. Snow began to fall again, thicker this time, soft flakes catching the orange glow of the streetlights. Cole stood and walked to the window, watching it gather on the sill. When I was a kid, he said quietly, my sister and I used to sit outside during the first snow and try to catch flakes on our tongues. She'd always say the first snow meant forgiveness. Lauren joined him. And do you believe that now? He turned toward her, his eyes gentler than she'd ever seen them. I think I'm finally ready to... Behind them. Owen yawned, declaring himself defeated, while Lily celebrated her victory by spinning in a slow, delighted circle on the carpet. Lauren smiled, watching them. Looks like the next generation already knows how to win gracefully. Or loudly, Cole said, laughing under his breath. She reached for her mug again, now lukewarm, and leaned against the counter. You know, she said, for a night of second chances, this one's not so bad. He smiled faintly. It's better than most firsts. And in the warmth of the apartment, the laughter, the snow, the small mercies of an ordinary evening, they let the silence stretch between them, not as absence, but as peace. For the first time in a long while, neither of them felt the need to fill it. The first light of morning crept across Denver like a slow exhale, pale gold spilling over rooftops, turning frost into glitter. The city hadn't quite woken yet. Cars whispered below, the air still soft with cold. Cole stood on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching the sky shift from bruised gray to something almost blue. Behind him, the sliding door was cracked open, letting in the smell of toast and the faint sound of Lily humming off key as she brushed her teeth. He'd been up for hours, reading drafts, board correspondence, the audit's final report. The company had survived its reckoning, but barely, and now, the same board that had once threatened to remove him wanted him back. He should have felt vindicated. Instead, all he felt was the heavy, fragile quiet that comes after storms. The door slid open. Lauren stepped out, wrapped in one of his old flannel shirts, her hair still tangled from sleep. The sight of her in the dawn light felt like something private, something steadying. "You've been up since 4, she said softly. He smiled faintly. Old habits. I used to think early mornings made me disciplined. Now I think they just made me lonely. She stepped beside him, folding her arms against the chill. The board. They want me back, he said. On their terms? Her brow furrowed, meaning same structure, same hierarchy, same blind spots. He stared out at the skyline, voice low. I told them I'd only return if they passed a safety-first charter, something binding, not decorative. It would give engineers veto power over launches, and every family affected by an incident would get a voice at the table. Lauren blinked, absorbing that. They'll fight it. They already are. He set his cup down on the railing. But I don't want to go back to the old way. I can't. Not after this year. The wind carried their silence for a moment, gentle, unhurried, finally. He turned toward her. There was no grand gesture, no rehearsed speech, just the quiet sincerity of someone who'd stopped needing armor. I'm not asking for marriage, he said. Not yet. Maybe not ever, if that word feels too heavy. But I am asking for something harder. Her lips parted slightly, her pulse picking up. Which is, he took a slow breath. The ordinary, school runs, hard days, Lily's piano lessons, Owen's sarcasm, your scholarship dinners, the small stuff, the kind people forget to keep because they think love has to look cinematic. She smiled faintly. You're terrible at cinematic. Good, he said. Then maybe we'll have a chance at something real. She studied him for a long moment, the lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his hand trembled just slightly as he rested it on the railing. A man stripped of myth, finally human. And what happens? She asked quietly. If I say yes to the ordinary, then we start there, he said, and keep showing up. 4 legs on the chair. Right. Her throat tightened. Truth, work, forgiveness, and showing up. He nodded. You taught me that. The sun broke through the clouds then, gold spilling across the balcony. Lauren blinked against the light, realizing her eyes had filled without her noticing. Yes, she said finally. To staying. His expression softened relief and awe mixing into something wordless. He didn't move toward her, not right away. He just stood there, as if memorizing the stillness before it became memory. Then, from inside, the door burst open with the chaotic certainty only a child could bring. "Look," Lily shouted, barreling toward them, paper clutched in her hand. "Science fair next week. We have to build a volcano." Lauren laughed, catching her as she nearly tripped over the threshold. A volcano. Huh. Big dreams. "Explosive dreams?" Cole said, grinning. Lily nodded solemnly. "It needs real smoke, Mr. Price said dry ice. "But I think we can do better." Cole crouched beside her, mock serious. "We'll make it glow." Lily squealed, already planning out colors and paint. Lauren met Cole's gaze over the top of the little girl's head, their smiles meeting in quiet agreement. This was the life worth guarding. Inside, Owen's voice carried from the kitchen. "Mom?" "The toaster's doing that weird thing again," Lauren sighed, half laughing. "We're going to need a bigger fire extinguisher." She took Lily's hand, leading her back inside. Cole followed, stopping for a second at the threshold to glance back at the waking city. The world looked different in the morning light, less like a battlefield, more like a place to begin. He closed the door behind him. At the breakfast table, sunlight pooled across a simple spread oatmeal, cooling in bowls. Lily's science fair flyer pinned under a coffee cup, a small white pillbox beside Lauren's phone, and a stack of permission slips waiting for signatures. Cole poured orange juice, missing slightly and laughing at himself. Lauren rolled her eyes, passing him a napkin. Owen wandered in, hair wild, wearing mismatched socks. "So, what's the plan today? Work, school, volcano schematics," Cole said, handing him a cup. "And survival." Lauren added, "Sounds about right," Owen said, sitting down with a grin. For a moment, no one spoke. The clink of spoons, the quiet hum of the heater, the smell of coffee, every ordinary sound became its own kind of music. Cole looked around the table at the boy's crooked smile, the girl's eager energy, the woman across from him, whose steadiness had remade his life, and felt something shift deep in his chest. Not triumph, not redemption. Something simpler, rarer. Peace. Lauren caught him watching her and smiled. "What?" He shook his head, just remembering. Remembering what? That this is enough. Outside. The snow began again, soft, endless, patient, inside. The chair held steady on 4 strong legs. Truth, work, forgiveness. Showing up, something true to keep. Sometimes. Healing begins where we least expect it, around a breakfast table, in the quiet moments after the storm, when no one is trying to be brave anymore. Lauren and Cole's story isn't about grand gestures or perfect endings. It's about learning that stability doesn't come from control, but from the courage to show up, again and again. Even when the world feels fragile, we spend so much of our lives chasing what looks right, forgetting that the things which hold us steady are often small and honest word, a child's laughter, a shared silence that says, "You're not alone anymore." Maybe that's what love really is, not the absence of pain, but the choice to build something gentle in its aftermath, a home that doesn't promise forever, only today, and the grace to try again tomorrow. Thank you for being here with us, for listening, feeling, and walking through this story with an open heart. Every like, share, and subscribe helps us keep creating stories that remind us of what truly matters: kindness, forgiveness, and the quiet strength it takes to begin again. If this story touched your heart, let it travel a little further, because sometimes a small act of sharing can bring light to someone who needs it most. Until next time, from all of us at Shining Stories, thank you for believing in the power of humanity